Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker, and welcome to your midweek. It is Wednesday, July the 17th. We've got a lot of thunderstorm activity that's out there right now, and we've got some heavy downpours coming along as well. And we're going to be seeing that for the next several days as we've got a lot of tropical moisture in place, a bit of an upper level disturbance too, and we also have a front that's going to be pushing southward, kind of trapping some of that tropical moisture. Just taking a look outside, you can see we got some wet roadways at I-10 and I-49, I-10 at Louisiana Avenue. Still waiting on some rain to come over toward Henderson and Breaux Bridge, and look at the Ambassador Caffrey camera with a big downpour happening there. Some lighter rains just up the road at I-10 and I-49. And then as you go off toward the west, it looks like things are relatively dry there over around Dusson, eastbound and westbound. Looks like those roadways are dry. So let's go ahead and take a look at the radar right now. And you can see right here in the heart of Lafayette, we've got a big thunderstorm that's happening right now. Some lightning and thunder going along with it, but for the most part, you're going to see some heavy rains along the I-10 corridor stretching from Scott through Lafayette and over toward Breaux Bridge and Henderson. And there's more rains that are kind of just to the north of the I-10 corridor there that may clip areas if you're heading over toward Baton Rouge. And then also into southwestern Louisiana, we've got some very heavy rain that's coming out of Cameron Parish that's going to start to move into portions of Vermilion. So we'll watch this particular line of thunderstorms here as it continues to push off toward the northeast. It may bring some additional rains to us right here in Lafayette. But we've had a couple days now of some decent downpours. A couple of days ago, we set a record, 2.13 inches of rain. I think we had just over a third of an inch at the airport yesterday, but some heavier stuff over towards St. Martin Parish. So let's get into the tropical weather here. And again, there isn't a whole lot to talk about, and that's why we're going to focus in a little later on Let's Talk Tropics on Category 1 hurricanes or weaker that made a significant impact on the coast of the United States. So looking at the Gulf of Mexico, again, we've got a lot of convection that's happening here right along the Gulf Coast here. We've got an upper level low that's right about here that's going to be scooting off into the Gulf of Mexico as well. And then later on, we've got a front that's going to trap a lot of this tropical moisture right here. So enhanced rain chances are going to be with us for the next couple of days. Not just a front, but also some upper level energy is going to come in as well. Central America, very quiet, but there's a lot of Saharan dust that's showing up on this particular satellite imagery, and you can see it out here mainly in the western part of the Caribbean Sea. It's kind of a hazier color, so the blues of the Caribbean Sea don't look quite as pristine as what you would normally see on a clear day, but you can see much of Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and then on down into Central America. Not a lot going on. Got to flare up with some thunderstorms along the Panamanian coast, but no threat there. The Caribbean, again, socked in with the Saharan dust as well. And it gets even thicker as you get over here toward the islands. You got a bit of a tropical wave right there that's kind of fighting through it all. And you've got another tropical wave that's a little bit farther toward the south. It's going to bring some rains to the southern Windward Islands as well as Trinidad. And look at all the Saharan dust that we've got out here over the eastern part of the Atlantic now coming off the African coast. So even though we've got some pretty decent looking tropical waves that are out here in the Atlantic Ocean, none of these are really having much of a chance to develop because of the dry air as well as the Saharan dust. And there's a real quick look at the far eastern Atlantic as well. Pretty good wave coming off the coast here, but again, look at all this Saharan dust that's up across the west eastern part of the Atlantic Ocean. So things are going to struggle. Doesn't mean that something wouldn't be able to develop, but right now it doesn't look like we're going to see a lot of action out there, although the water temperatures are way up there, which would, if we had better atmospheric conditions, we'd still be able to have something develop. And really watching that tropical cyclone heat potential as we get less and less systems going over these areas to churn things up. That tropical cyclone heat potential gets a little bit higher. This is the measure of 80-degree water at the surface and then how deep that water goes below the surface. And you can see anywhere from the Gulf of Mexico through the entire Caribbean Sea and then east of the Leeward and Windward Islands all the way out in the development zone. That heat content is high there, but it is extreme here in the Caribbean as well as the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico where the loop current is. And we'll have to watch those areas farther down the road if anything does develop, because if a tropical system were to move across those areas and have the right atmospheric conditions, you could get get some rapid intensification. You could go from a tropical depression to a hurricane in zero flat. As far as the Saharan dust, though, it is the inhibiting factor, as well as the dry air covering almost all of the Atlantic Ocean here. You've got dust that's moving through the Caribbean, and it's even moving into the western part of the Gulf of Mexico too. And we have seen some pretty sunrises and sunsets this morning. The skies were just stunning as the sun was coming up, but at the same time we had showers and thunderstorms that were developing right along the coast. So a real quick look at the future. I don't see much coming up here on the GFS. You got a double barrel high pressure area over the central part of the Atlantic, so everything will continue to just kind of drift off the African coast and head over toward the Caribbean Sea. Now, the Euro model generally is the same, big ridge of high pressure out here, but there is a little indication, maybe days 9 or 10, that maybe one of these tropical waves out here wants to possibly develop into something. So maybe a bit of a weak low pressure coming in at the very end of that, right there at the very end of that loop. But not very excited about anything that's out there. So the tropical outlook from the National Hurricane Center showing no new systems are expected to develop over the next 7 days. So because the tropics are kind of boring, I did want to go back and look at a few things because a lot of folks, and I asked this on social media, and I would assume that most people who are listening live right now or who will chime in when this gets left on the YouTube channel as taped, I bet there's quite a few of you who have said in the back of your head or maybe even out loud, it's just a Category 1, it's just a tropical storm. I don't have to prepare for it, I don't have to worry about that. Just a weak little hurricane, no big deal, I've been through these before. Well, we're going to look at some of the Category 1 hurricanes or weaker that made a significant impact on the United States. Now, some of these hurricanes were higher than a Category 1 while they were out in the ocean, but these are Category 1 or less hurricanes at landfall in the United States. So we're going to start with Hurricane Isaac back in 2012, and a lot of us are familiar with this one because, well, it hit Louisiana. It came on shore around Grand Isle and then slid across the Baton Rouge area, bringing significant damage there and a lot of heavy rain. We had some decent winds here in Lafayette, but we were on the good side of the system, so it didn't make a significant impact on us here in Acadiana, but there were some areas that picked up nearly 30 inches of rain, and those flooding rains continued to move inland over Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, and Illinois. And as you can see there on there, it cost about $3 billion worth of damage. So a Category 1 was pretty significant, and we did have fatalities here in Louisiana due to Hurricane Isaac. Another one on the list that we're very familiar with is Tropical Storm Allison, creating $9 billion worth of damage. This was again mainly due to flooding. Tropical Storm Allison actually came on shore over Texas and then hovered over the Houston area for a number of days, putting us on the dirty side of the system, and we had tremendous amounts of rain here in the Acadiana area, kind of similar to what we saw with the flood of 2016. By the way, the flood of 2016 should get an honorable mention on this since it was tropical moisture, but was an official tropical type of system. But anyway, Allison had so much rain that it flooded Highway 14 across parts of Vermilion Parish and also flooded Highway 90. So two of our major evacuation routes for St. Mary and Iberia Parish were impassable, and virtually every road that was between Lafayette and northern Vermilion Parish was underwater as well. So the flooding was the big problem with Allison as it stuck around for a number of days. Next on the list is Hurricane Matthew. This one is probably one that's not as familiar to most of us since it's more of an East Coast storm. Matthew, by the way, was a Category 1 at landfall, and when Matthew made landfall there, what it did is it rode up the coast of Florida and then eventually up into the Carolinas. A lot of tree damage, a lot of flooding, and rivers were sent to record levels over parts of the Carolinas as well as over Virginia. Next one on the list is Hurricane Florence, another one that you probably don't remember too much because this was also an East Coast hurricane, $24 billion worth of damage, a very slow-moving Category 1 hurricane coming onto the Carolina coastline and then just kind of stalling there. So there was a lot of freshwater flooding, incredible flooding in some places with over 30 inches of rain, and there were some areas close to Washington, D.C. that picked up over 10 inches of rain. So this one only coming on shore as a Category 1. It was a much more powerful hurricane when it was out over the waters, but the freshwater flooding is what really caused a lot of problems when it came to Hurricane Florence, and again, just a Category 1. The last one on the list most of you have probably heard of is Hurricane Sandy. Back in 2012, again, this was a stronger hurricane when it was offshore, but technically it made landfall as a non-tropical low pressure area. It was no longer a warm core system, but it was still packing winds of 90 miles per hour. Now, because this was a non-tropical system, a lot of the warnings were dropped right before it actually made landfall because officially it wasn't a tropical system. But those rules have changed now because of Hurricane Sandy, and you continue to see tropical storm warnings and storm surge warnings that will stay even with a hurricane that is no longer a tropical type of system officially. But $69 million or billion dollars worth of damage due to Hurricane Sandy back in 2012. Millions were without power for a long time, 1 to 2 feet of rain, and incredible tides and storm surge flooding as well as coastal erosion all up and down the east coast of the United States. Now, part of the reason why the numbers are so high with Hurricane Sandy is this hit the most populated area of the United States, that Boston, Washington megalopolis, where it's basically just urban all the way from Washington, D.C., all the way to Boston. So this came where there's a lot of people that live. And then on top of that, the heavy rains, the storm surge flooding, there was a lot of damage, and it really made an impact there on the east coast of the United States. And the reason why I bring these up is because these are just Category 1. I really don't want anybody out there saying, oh, it's just a Category 1. I don't have to worry about this one. Remember, 9 days ago, we had a Category 1 hurricane that came on shore over central Texas. And I just wanted to get you an update here of the power outages, and we're still looking at just under 50,000 people still are without power across the state of Texas. Now, some of this may be due to the severe weather they've had in the western part, but most of them are right here over southeastern Texas with nearly 50,000 people without power. And this was a Category 1 hurricane 9 days ago that came in. A lot of these folks were not expecting to have this significant amount of damage, especially when the hurricane made landfall farther to the south, but the remnants of Hurricane Beryl coming in and moving across a huge metro area like Houston and then taking down the infrastructure so quickly. You've got so many people that were without power. It was, I think, 2.5 million at one point in time, and yesterday it was still about 150,000. So they've dropped it another 100,000 and got them back energized once again. But this was a Category 1 hurricane, and I think a lot of people didn't think that there could be as much damage or this much heartache and tiredness and hotness and humid stickiness for 9 days like this. So hopefully the other 50,000 or so will be back on power, hopefully by the end of the week. I know over a week is long enough. Even 3 days is way, way too long. But do think about this, because even though we're still here in July, and there really isn't a whole lot of action out there right now, we're right in here. So we are right on the cusp of the big increase to where we get to the peak of the hurricane season there on September the 10th. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty when it comes to the busier part of the season. So that's why you need to gather the essentials to keep yourself steady for 3 days. That means a gallon of water per person per day. Make sure you have plenty of non-perishable foods. Get your batteries, your flashlights. Make sure you got plenty of medicine. And also make sure you got entertainment for the kids, and also a lot of everything that you would possibly need for your pets. Now, this again would be for a Category 1 if you're deciding to stay at home and ride out the storm. But after watching Texas, maybe you would want to try to prepare for 5 days rather than just 3 days. And hopefully, because I think after 5 days, the majority, I would say 80% of folks, were with power again. But it took a long time, and it is still taking a long time to get things back up. And they're just going to patchwork a lot of this stuff as quickly as possible. So let's hope that another one doesn't come along too soon to take out what they've been able to put back together. So just keep that in mind. The busy part of the season is right around the corner. Well, I really hope you enjoyed Let's Talk Tropics. I know I enjoy hanging out with y'all on the midweek here at lunchtime too. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends too. I'm really happy that I was able to pick up nearly 2,700 subscribers to my YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed to it, I encourage you to do so and turn on those notifications as well. Hoping to have 2,700 by the end of the week. That would be a really nice goal to hit. So if you got some friends who are not familiar with Acadiana weather today on YouTube, tell them right now and tell them to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Stay dry, but if you're like me and enjoy a little rumbling thunder and some rain in the afternoon, I hope you enjoy that too. Until tomorrow, I'm Dave Baker. I will see you in the morning on Acadiana Weather Today.